This could be one of the most awful ways somebody has ever died, and whatever you do, don't look up the picture. In Canada, on July 30th, 2008, 22-year-old Tim McLean was on a bus traveling from Edmonton to Winnipeg. The bus then made a stop where a man named Vince Lee boarded. Vince Lee, a 40-year-old Canadian, suffered from untreatable schizophrenia, and without warning, he brutally attacked Tim McLean. Vince Lee sat next to Tim McLean, but Tim barely acknowledged him, and he then fell asleep against the window pane, with headphones covering his ears. According to witnesses, McLean was sleeping with his headphones on when the man sitting next to him, who was Vince Lee, suddenly produced a large knife and began stabbing him in the neck and chest. After the attack began, the bus driver pulled over to the side of the road, and he and all the other passengers fled the vehicle. The driver and two other men made an attempt to rescue McLean, but were chased away by Vince Lee, who slashed at them from behind the locked bus doors. Vince Lee decapitated Tim McLean and displayed his severed head to those outside the bus. Then he returned to Tim McLean's body and began severing other parts and consuming some of his flesh. Police arrived and Vince Lee was still on the bus, and the other passengers were huddled at the roadside, and some of them were crying and even vomiting. Vince Lee made an attempt to escape by driving the bus away, but the driver had engaged the emergency immobilizer system, which made the bus undrivable. Witnesses then saw Vince Lee stabbing and cutting McLean's body with a knife and carrying McLean's severed head around the bus. The police were in a standoff with Vince, and they had summoned a special negotiator and heavily armed tactical units. Police officers then observed Vince Lee eating parts of Tim McLean's body, and they also heard Vince Lee say, "I have to stay on the bus forever." Vince Lee then attempted to escape the bus again by breaking through a window, but was arrested soon afterwards, and he was shot twice with a taser, handcuffed, and placed in the back of a police car. Parts of the victim's body placed in plastic bags were retrieved from the bus, but Tim McLean's ears, nose, and tongue were found in Vince Lee's pockets. Tim McLean's eyes and heart were never found, and it was assumed that Vince Lee ate both of them. Vince Lee was found not criminally responsible for the murder due to his mental state at the time of the attack. The verdict was based on the assessment that Vince Lee was suffering from a severe mental disorder and was eventually committed to a mental health facility. I come across this case every so often, and it always hits the same. Tim McLean was so young, he was just 22 years old, and he didn't deserve this at all. And what makes this case even more sad is that 5 months after his death, his son was born. I get that Vince Lee was suffering from a severe mental disability, but I still would give him life in prison for doing this. This case is absolutely horrific, and it's definitely one of the worst out there.